There is one Machiavellian truth every woman secretly fears. The moment you stop chasing her, she will chase you not because she wants to, but because she suddenly realizes she might lose the man she misjudged. And tonight, you're going to understand why that fear holds more power over attraction than anything you've ever said to her. Because men were conditioned to believe pursuit equals love. We were taught that proving interest creates security, that showing consistency builds trust, and that demonstrating effort makes her choose you. But here is the dark twist. Machiavelli understood. The more available you are, the less valuable you seem. Not because you're not enough, but because she believes she already owns your attention. Ownership kills pursuit, and every woman, consciously or unconsciously, assumes she owns the man who is emotionally predictable. She doesn't chase that man. She keeps him around, just in case. But the moment your certainty collapses, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop proving your devotion, when you stop reacting to every emotional shift, she begins to feel something ancient, rising beneath her confidence: uncertainty. She doesn't panic at your distance. She panics at her inability to measure what your distance means. And meaning is the root of feminine obsession. But before we go deeper, listen carefully. Subscribe if you're ready to understand the part of yourself she hoped you'd never discover. Now we continue. A woman rarely fears the man who expresses interest. She fears the man whose interest she cannot predict. That unpredictability interrupts her emotional map. It forces her to confront the possibility that she misread you, misjudged you, and underestimated you. Her mistake becomes your leverage because miscalculation breeds insecurity, and insecurity breeds pursuit. So hear this. If she never fears losing you, she never values keeping you. Her chase begins exactly where your need for validation ends. Because validation is the invisible chain that keeps most men emotionally enslaved. The more validation you seek, the more she senses you don't believe in your own value. The more you chase answers, reassurance, and emotional confirmation, the more she realizes she has psychological leverage over you. And leverage makes her comfortable, not attracted. But when you withdraw that need, when your silence replaces explanation, when your composure replaces emotional reaction, she suddenly faces a reality she never prepared for. She is no longer the emotional center of gravity in your life. That is the exact moment her chase begins. See, men believe she chases love, but in truth, women chase control. The man she cannot control becomes the man she cannot stop thinking about. Not because she wants him more, but because her ego cannot accept losing influence over a man who once placed her at the center of his emotional universe. This is the Machiavellian shift. When a man removes emotional dependence, he doesn't become distant, he becomes sovereign. And sovereignty is the most seductive masculine energy on earth. Not because you're indifferent, but because you are self-contained. Your attention becomes a privilege instead of a default. Your energy becomes a choice rather than a response. That reversal forces her into pursuit. She begins remembering the affection she ignored. She starts replaying the effort she dismissed. She starts examining the messages she once skimmed over. She wonders what changed, when it changed, and more importantly, why it changed without her permission. And nothing claws at the feminine ego deeper than a man evolving beyond her influence. Understand this clearly. Chasing is not about desire. Chasing is about emotional correction. When she feels the imbalance shifting, she instinctively tries to reverse it, not to win your heart, but to reclaim equilibrium. She chases not because she suddenly loves you, but because she fears losing someone she once believed would never leave. And that belief, her belief in your permanence, is exactly what destroyed the polarity in the first place. Because women do not chase what feels guaranteed. They chase what feels slightly out of reach. They chase what keeps their mind active, their ego alert, their emotions uncertain. Certainty kills desire. Uncertainty feeds it. But here's the part men never see. She doesn't realize she stopped valuing you. She doesn't notice when the respect fades. She doesn't feel the shift inside herself when your presence becomes background noise. It happens quietly, slowly, subtly, until suddenly, you step back. That single step back is the earthquake her ego never saw coming. Because now the story she wrote about you begins to collapse at the edges. She can't predict your tone anymore. She can't forecast your next move. She can't rely on your immediate response. She can't assume your loyalty. She can't feel your emotional weight pressing against her decisions. Your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. And that silence? It forces her into a confrontation with herself. She starts scanning the dynamic for signs she missed. She replays the last moments when you seemed fully invested. She remembers the affection she was too distracted to reciprocate. She feels the guilt she avoided when your devotion felt effortless. She wonders if she created the very distance she now fears. The human mind is built to chase whatever disturbs its certainty, and nothing disturbs certainty more than a man regaining his self-respect. This is where the obsession begins, not with love, but with doubt. Doubt about her own judgment, doubt about her assumptions, doubt about whether she pushed too far, doubt about whether someone else now holds the attention she wasted. It's not jealousy, it's identity threat. Because losing a man she respected is painful, but losing a man she took for granted is devastating. It forces her to acknowledge something she never wanted to face. She misread you, and now she might lose you because of it. Women don't fear losing men they don't value, they fear losing men they underestimated. A woman will survive heartbreak. What she cannot survive is regret. And regret only ignites when she realizes she misjudged someone she should have protected, appreciated, or chosen differently. That's why her chase begins. Not when you ignore her, not when you walk away, not when you move on. Her chase begins when she realizes she may have miscalculated your worth. Because here's the twisted psychological reality. Women do not chase love. They chase the reversal of their own mistake. They chase the restoration of a misjudgment. They chase the correction of an ego wound they inflicted on themselves. This is not emotional desire, it is emotional repair. She will return to the scene of her miscalculation until she rewrites the narrative. But here lies the Machiavellian power most men never use. When you stop performing for her affection, she is forced to perform for your attention. Her silence turns into curiosity. Her curiosity turns into insecurity. Her insecurity turns into pursuit. She starts testing your interest indirectly, texting casually, reacting to your stories, checking your status, asking friends about you. Not because she's sure of what she wants, because she's terrified of what she may have lost. But here's the most sinister truth. Women aren't actually afraid of losing you. They're afraid of watching another woman value the man they wasted. Jealousy doesn't trigger the chase, comparison does. When she imagines another woman receiving the attention she rejected, her ego begins to burn. She doesn't chase you because you're perfect, she chases you because she can't handle someone else completing the story she left unfinished. And only now does she feel the consequence of something she always assumed she controlled. Your heart was never guaranteed. Because the moment she realizes she never owned your loyalty, she questions every assumption she once used to justify pulling away. She didn't lose your affection, she lost the certainty she built around it. And certainty is what makes women behave carelessly with a man's devotion. But now she feels the fracture. The silence, the shift, the unpredictability, the lack of emotional access she once treated as hers by default. This is when the emotional tables turn. When you stop trying, she starts wondering. When you stop explaining, she starts investigating. When you stop chasing, she starts remembering. And those memories haunt her more than any breakup ever could. Because every woman has one hidden weakness. She wants to be chosen by the man she believes is above average. Not by the man who chases, but by the man who could have anyone, and still chooses her. When she senses you've evolved into that man, her behavior shifts instantly. She becomes more careful with her words, more attentive with her tone, more uncertain about how you feel. She tries to reopen the connection indirectly, as if testing the waters without risking rejection. But the irony is this. She isn't afraid you don't love her. She's afraid you don't love her anymore. If this truth is starting to hit deeper than you expected, like the video because you're finally seeing what she never wanted you to understand. Now hear this. Women don't chase men who want them. Women chase men who make them question themselves. Because questioning themselves forces them to question you, your value, your depth, your potential without them. And a man whose worth grows in her imagination becomes impossible for her to ignore, deny, or replace. Her pursuit doesn't come from desire. It comes from fear of erasing a story she suddenly regrets writing. But here lies the deeper Machiavellian layer most men overlook. A woman does not chase because she suddenly understands your value. She chases because she realizes she miscalculated the emotional cost of losing you. The cost wasn't heartbreak. The cost was her own ego collapsing under the weight of uncertainty. This begins the psychological obsession, not with your presence, but with the version of you she thinks she might have misread. That version becomes a phantom she cannot ignore, a possibility she can't erase, a version of you she begins to romanticize in her mind. In other words, she becomes addicted to the idea of you, not the memory of you, and this addiction grows in silence. See, when you chased, you fed her certainty. When you begged, you fed her confidence. When you reassured her, you fed her control. But when you withdraw not emotionally, but spiritually, you starve her of all three. And starvation is what triggers pursuit. Because here is the unfiltered truth. A woman never feels more alive than when she feels slightly unsure of a man she desires. That uncertainty rewires her instincts. It forces her to examine her role instead of yours. It makes her question what she contributed to the distance. And most importantly, it makes her imagine someone else taking her place in your life. That image alone can break the strongest female ego. Not because she lost you, but because someone else might gain you. That fear goes deeper than heartbreak. Heartbreak ends eventually. Ego loss lingers forever. Her imagination is her enemy now. It shows her versions of you she never respected. It shows her versions of you she never praised. It shows her versions of you she now aches to possess. But here's the twist she never expects. Your evolution was never about her. You didn't become stronger to win her back. You became stronger because you stopped abandoning yourself just to be understood. And that realization is what makes her chase something far more dangerous than affection. Your respect. Because affection can be taken lightly, attention can be ignored, desire can be dismissed. But a woman knows respect is sacred. When she senses she's lost that, the chase becomes inevitable. Respect is the one currency she cannot counterfeit. It cannot be begged for, demanded, or manipulated. A man gives it only when he feels a woman values his presence, not his weakness, his standards, not his desperation. And now she feels the shift. Once, you placed her on a pedestal she didn't even ask for. Now you stand at eye level with her, calm, centered, grounded, and that elevation makes her nervous in ways she never anticipated. Because women don't chase superiority. They chase stability, wrapped in mystery. And you've become exactly that. Not cold, just self-contained. Not distant, just disciplined. Not unavailable, just uninterested in anything that insults your worth. This is the masculine polarity she always claimed she wanted but never believed you were capable of becoming. And now that you've stepped into it, she feels a pull she cannot intellectualize. It begins quietly. She becomes more attentive to your tone. She studies your expressions more closely. She tries to read your silence the way she once read your words. She mirrors your pacing instead of dictating it. She softens where she was once firm. She offers where she once withheld. These are signs of pursuit, not always loud, but always intentional. But here is the Machiavellian twist. She isn't chasing you to regain connection. She's chasing you to regain certainty. She wants to know where she stands. She wants to know if the door is still open. She wants to know if she can still influence you. She wants to know if the emotional power she once held still exists. And with every unanswered question, her chase intensifies. Because now she's no longer pursuing attention. She's pursuing clarity. Clarity she once took for granted. Clarity she assumed would always be hers. Clarity only you can grant. And the less you give it, the more she feels herself slipping into a position she never imagined. The woman who wants more from the man who now gives less. And that dynamic alone is enough to reshape everything she once believed about you. Because now, instead of evaluating your affection, she's evaluating her own. Instead of questioning your intentions, she's questioning her decisions. Instead of believing she was always in control, she begins wondering if she ever truly understood you at all. This is where her emotional balance collapses. See, a woman doesn't chase the man who needs her. She chases the man she believes she never fully captured. The man whose mind she can't read. The man whose heart she can't predict. The man whose energy she can't fully possess. Because possession, not attraction, is the subconscious battlefield of feminine desire. She wants to feel chosen by a man who could walk away at any moment. That tension, fear wrapped inside desire is what makes pursuit thrilling. But there's a darker truth beneath the surface. Women don't chase men because they suddenly realize his value. They chase because they suddenly realize their value wasn't enough to keep him. That realization is devastating. Not because she lost you, but because she may have already been replaced by her own assumptions. And every time she imagines another woman standing where she used to stand, she feels the sting of losing something she never secured. Her ego begins to fracture not from rejection, but from the possibility that she overestimated her position. This creates emotional inversion. The more she tries to regain control, the more she realizes she has none. The more she tries to understand you, the more mysterious you become. The more she tries to predict your intentions, the more unpredictable your silence grows. You're not withholding affection. You're withholding availability. And availability is what she once weaponized against you until now. Now she must confront a reality she never wanted to believe. The version of you she controlled no longer exists. And the version standing in front of her now is a man she doesn't know how to win. And nothing terrifies a woman more than realizing the game she thought she mastered has transformed into a puzzle she cannot solve. Not because you changed overnight, but because she finally noticed the changes she ignored for months. Now your silence carries weight. Your distance carries meaning. Your presence carries authority. Your absence carries consequence. She feels it in the way you no longer rush to respond. She feels it in the way your tone is calmer, more measured. She feels it in the way your attention is no longer guaranteed. She feels it in the way she can't predict what you're thinking, feeling, or choosing. For the first time, she feels like a guest in a story she once believed she authored. This is the moment pursuit becomes unavoidable, because now she isn't chasing your affection, she's chasing her place in your world. When she speaks, she listens to herself more carefully. When she messages, she watches your timing with new sensitivity. When she approaches, she adjusts her tone, afraid of pushing too hard. When she sees you, she feels the gravity of the man who no longer revolves around her. But the deepest psychological twist is this. She's not chasing the man you were. She's chasing the man you became when you stopped needing her. Because needing a woman makes you predictable. Wanting a woman makes you vulnerable. But choosing a woman from a place of self-respect makes you powerful. And power, real power, is the oxygen of feminine desire. Now she must confront her greatest unspoken fear, that you have finally become the man she always hoped you would be, right after she stopped deserving him. This realization cuts deeper than heartbreak. Heartbreak is emotional. This is existential. It threatens her identity, not her feelings. It challenges her story, not her memory. It exposes her pride, not her heart. And so she begins to chase, not because she thinks she can win you, but because she cannot bear the thought that another woman might. And here is the Machiavellian irony concealed beneath the entire dynamic. She never feared losing your affection, she feared losing your potential. Women don't chase the man they once had, they chase the man they finally see. Too late. The man who stepped into his sovereignty only after she stepped out of his certainty. Your power was not born from walking away. Your power was born the moment you stopped collapsing for love. That transformation did not make you cold. It made you unshakable. And unshakable men are the rarest kind. Now she approaches differently. She speaks differently. She chooses differently. She behaves like someone who is afraid to make another mistake, because she knows another mistake would end the story permanently. And this time, she would have no way back. You've become the man she can't read, can't fully influence, can't entirely possess. You've become sovereign, emotionally immune to her withdrawal, psychologically independent of her validation, spiritually disconnected from needing her presence to define your worth. And that is the man she chases forever. Not because you played a game, but because she finally realized she was playing one alone. If you feel that shift inside yourself, if you recognize the identity forming within you, then subscribe, comment, and share so other men can discover the strength they were never taught to claim. Now hear this clearly. A woman never chases what she thinks she owns. She chases what she believes she could lose. And if losing you forces her to confront her own misjudgment, then your evolution was never about proving your worth. It was about realizing she never measured it correctly. So let me leave you with the final Machiavellian realization. If she only chases what escapes her grasp, why were you spending your life gripping someone who never held you with the same strength?